We are living inside the greatest financial experiment in human history. A world built not on gold, not on production, but on debt. A system so vast and complex that most of us can't see its invisible chains. The question isn't asterisk, if asterisk, this system will collapse, but asterisk, when asterisk, ... And who will be left to pay the price when it finally resets? To understand where we're going, we have to look back to where it all began. Thousands of years ago, in ancient Mesopotamia, the very first forms of writing weren't epic poems or love stories. They were clay tablets, meticulously recording who owed what to whom. They were ledgers of debt. In those days, debt was sacred, overseen by priests and kings. But these ancient rulers understood something fundamental that modern leaders seem to have forgotten. You enslave everyone with debt forever. So, they created the Jubilee, a periodic forgiveness of all debts. It wasn't an act of charity. It was a survival mechanism to prevent society from collapsing under its own weight. Fast forward a few thousand years to Renaissance Italy. This is where debt gets a major upgrade. The Medici family, the godfathers of banking, transformed the system. Debt was no longer just about grain or cattle. It was about gold, credit, and influence. Money became abstract, and with it, the scale of borrowing exploded. Kings and even popes lined up to get loans, funding endless wars and lavish empires. But even then, the core lesson remained. Look at Spain in the 1500s. Despite hauling mountains of silver from the New World, they learned the hard way that even the richest empires can drown when ambition outpaces reality. But the truly modern form of debt, the one we're trapped in today, was forged in the fires of the 20th century. After World War I, nations were crippled by unpayable debts. Germany, burdened with war reparations, descended into hyperinflation. You've seen the pictures. People pushing wheelbarrows full of worthless cash just to buy a single loaf of bread. This wasn't just an economic crisis. It was the fertile ground for political chaos and, ultimately, another world war. Debt had become a weapon. In 1944, as World War II was ending, the world's leaders gathered at Bretton Woods to try and build a more stable system. They pegged the US dollar to gold, making it the anchor of the global economy. The promise was stability. The reality created a global dependence on the United States and its currency. For a while, it worked. But the system had a fatal flaw. It relied on discipline. And that discipline shattered on August 15, 1971. On that day, President Richard Nixon made a televised announcement that severed the dollar's last link to gold. It was a quiet financial revolution, but its consequences were deafening. Without the anchor of gold, debt became limitless. Governments were now free to borrow and print money with virtually no constraints. This was the moment the floodgates were opened. This single decision created the world we live in, now a world of fiat currency, where money is backed by nothing more than faith and government decree. The era that followed, from the 1980s onward, can only be described as the age of leverage. Leaders like Reagan and Thatcher championed policies that led to massive public borrowing, all in the name of prosperity. A dangerous pattern was established. Use debt to chase growth, ignore the consequences, and wait for the inevitable crash. We saw it with the Latin American debt crisis, the Asian financial crisis, and on and on. Each time, the system was patched up, but the underlying addiction to debt only grew stronger. Then came 2008. The global financial crisis wasn't just about bad mortgages. It was about debt, built on top of debt, on top of more debt. Mortgages were bundled into securities, which were then sliced up into complex derivatives, all amplified by staggering levels of leverage, sometimes 30-1. When the house of cards came tumbling down, the truth was exposed for all to see. The system wasn't designed to protect ordinary people. It was designed to protect the powerful who were promptly bailed out while millions lost their homes and savings. You would think we would have learned our lesson. We didn't. In the years since 2008, we haven't deleveraged. We've done the exact opposite. Global debt has more than tripled in just 2 decades, rocketing past an unthinkable $300 trillion. That's 4 times the size of the entire world economy. Governments, corporations, and households, we are all hooked. We've been living under the grand illusion that debt can grow forever without consequences. But in finance, as in physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Today, debt is like the air we breathe. It's invisible, but it's everywhere. Governments finance their massive deficits not by raising taxes, but by quietly issuing bonds selling their IOUs on the global market. Corporations borrow billions not to invest in new factories or hire more workers, but to buy back their own stock, artificially inflating their share prices and executive bonuses. And ordinary people are encouraged to live on credit cards, car loans, and mortgages, shackled by monthly payments that drain their wealth. The system thrives on this leverage. It feels weightless on the way up, creating a sense of effortless prosperity. But on the way down, its weight is crushing. Look no further than the United States, the heart of the global financial system. The U.S. national debt has exploded past $34 trillion. Think about that number. To put it in perspective, the interest payments on that debt are now on track to surpass the entire defense budget. The world's superpower is now borrowing money just to pay the interest on money it already borrowed. This is the classic definition of a debt spiral, and it's a flashing red flag for the entire world. And it's not just the US across the Atlantic. Countries like Italy and Greece have debt-to-GDP ratios well over 100%, making them permanently vulnerable to the next crisis. And then there's China, the world's second-largest economy. While its official numbers look managed, they hide a terrifying mountain of debt in local governments and corporations, a ticking time bomb whose true scale is unknown. So, what comes next? History shows us there are only a few ways out of a debt trap this deep. One is through massive economic growth, but with aging populations and slowing productivity, that looks increasingly unlikely. Another is through austerities, lashing government spending, but that's politically toxic and can trigger deep recessions. The third option is inflation. Governments can try to inflate their way out of debt by printing money, making the debt worth less over time. But this is a dangerous game that punishes savers and can spiral into the kind of hyperinflation we saw in Germany. The final, most chaotic option is a reset, a jubilee on a global scale. This could mean massive defaults, where countries and corporations simply refuse to pay. It could mean a new Bretton Woods-style conference to redesign the entire monetary system. Or it could mean a chaotic collapse, where trust evaporates and the system freezes. In that scenario, the price will be paid not by the architects of the system, but by ordinary people whose savings, pensions, and jobs are tied to it. We are at the end of a multi-decade debt supercycle. The invisible chains are tightening. The mathematical certainty is that this system is unsustainable. The only uncertainty is how it ends. Will it be a controlled demolition or an uncontrolled implosion? Whatever happens, the world that emerges on the other side will look very different from the one we know today. Thank you so much for watching. This is a complex topic, and we've only scratched the surface. What do you think is the most likely outcome? And if you found this video insightful, please give it a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. Stay curious.